Are you thinking about starting a side hustle or an online business of some kind and you're just not taking action? You're not getting started? That might be because you are believing 5 very specific myths about what it takes to get started with your side hustle and online business. And I'm going to debunk those today. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Brazeness Podcast, where we're all about helping you build an online business, work less, earn more, travel often, and live your version of a brazen, audacious, and badass life. I'm your host, Brooke Roberts, and I am so excited to have you here hanging out with me today to talk about side hustles, and more specifically, I should say, about myths around starting a side hustle. But before we dive into that, I want to share a quick announcement. I have opened enrollment for my signature program, the Build Your Online Business Incubator. BYOB, baby. We're building our online businesses together inside the incubator, and I've opened enrollment today. So if you're interested in joining that program and learning more about it, it's an online course where I take you step by step from no idea to start earning an income online in a 5-module, high impact, actionable strategies and tips on everything I have learned over the past decade plus of running my own businesses, plus several more years running somebody else's online business. So I know a lot, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I have put this into a streamlined system step by step so that you can start your side hustle or your online business of time and actually start taking action and making moves in the digital online space. So if you want to learn more about that, it's at brazenest.com/incubator. All one word, obviously. I'm sure you know how to spell incubator. Anyway, just go to brazenest.com/incubator and you'll be able to sign up, learn all about the program, and decide if it's the right fit for you. I hope it is, and I hope to see you inside. All right, let's get into today's topic. I've been drinking a lot of coffee, y'all. So I'm hyped up. I am on fire about this topic. So let's get into it. I was on a coaching call with a client about 2 weeks ago, and this subject matter kind of came up, and we ended up having kind of a heart-to-heart, coming to Jesus moment together where I had to sort of debunk some of these myths, and sometimes they also manifest as limiting beliefs around starting a business or moving the needle in your business, or just taking action in some way to build something of your own, to build something that could give you freedom of time, of location, of financial, independence that we're all trying for in some capacity. That freedom trifecta I talk about all the time. We all want a piece of that. And so these are some myths that often come up in the coaching that I do with people, whether I'm coaching them on their career or on building a business or building a side project or a side hustle or pursuing a passion of some kind. These 5 things always seem to percolate, especially around that side hustle, that business, online business conversation. So I want to talk through them today, and I also want to debunk them a little bit, give you a little pep talk, give you a little, Auntie Brooke sort of giving it to you straight, giving you the hard truths, and hopefully inspiring you and motivating you to take some action and make some decisions and move forward with your online business. All right, let's get into it. The first myth that most people believe when it comes to starting any kind of project, honestly, but specifically starting something of their own, starting that side hustle, it's that it has to be the perfect idea. Like, if you're going to start something, if you're going to put yourself out there, it's got to be the creme de la creme, the perfect, fully fleshed out, proven idea and no fail idea that you could ever have about starting a side hustle and online business. And honey, I'm here to tell you right now that idea does not exist. There is not a company on the planet that their first iteration, their first idea, their first thing that they thought of was a home run. I I mean, maybe there's an example. Put it in the comments below, send me an email, let me know what that company was and what that product was. But I can almost guarantee that 99.9% of any company, any product, anything that exists out there in the marketplace, that this was not their first rodeo. And maybe it's their first company, and maybe it's the first brand they built, but I bet the first product they tried to create and sell, or the first piece of content or first show they tried to launch as a podcast maybe was a failure. There's a lot of examples of people online, especially where it looks like, and they will sell this to you, frankly, and I hate it when I see this stuff, but they will say, I just, worked and hustled for 3 months and now I'm a millionaire. And then when you dive deeper into their story, you realize, no, this was not the first time that they launched an online course, or the first time that they started a podcast, or they had 1 million followers just overnight, out of nowhere by their efforts. It was typically a fluke, something that went viral by accident that they had no control over. And so any success that you see out there, mine included, you have to look at that with a little grain of salt and recognize that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that led that person or that organization, that company, to where they are now, but likely that they have had some missteps, some failures, some and maybe embarrassments even along the way that just did not work. And your idea, whatever your idea is, or even if you have like 5 ideas right now and you're like, I don't know what to do, I promise you that whatever you end up even pursuing, it is going to morph and change over time, which we're going to talk a little bit about this in some of these other myths as well. But there is no such thing as a perfect idea. The only way you are going to tease out the perfect, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes on the podcast. The only way you're going to figure out the quote perfect path for you is you got to take action. You got to start testing stuff. You got to start putting stuff out into the world and seeing what hits, what flops, what works, what doesn't. I have put out so much content on the internet. It's kind of embarrassing. And a lot of it has not been a viral hit. I haven't had any viral hits. But what I have done is shown up on a relatively consistent basis and tried to add value to a community, an audience of people that I care about and I feel like I have something to share with them, and just showing up and putting in the reps every single week or month or year to try to add value and try to show them that maybe I have something to teach them and help them achieve whatever goal we're working towards. And you have to do the same thing. There's no perfect way. There's no perfect idea. It's going to fail in some capacity. You just have to accept that that's going to happen and take action anyway. And the only way you're going to get clarity is by taking action. So that perfect idea doesn't exist. So once you have an idea that you feel like, I kind of am excited about this, then you just got to figure out what's my next best step and take that step. And then from there, take the next best step based on more data and information and feedback. And that's what being an entrepreneur is. That's what being a business owner is. Just making educated decisions based on the data that you have in front of you, and then gathering more data and then doing it over and over and over again until you've reached a point where you're like, wow, I'm moving, I'm grooving, I'm much better at this. And you can make better decisions that are closer to quote unquote perfection. But even if you're experienced like me, I still screw up all the time. I'm still trying to make decisions that I know I'm like, which one's the right way? And I know that there's no perfect way. There's no perfect way forward, but I still have to show up and make those decisions and then just take action, gather more data, and move on. All right. That was number 1. Is the idea does not have to be perfect for you to get started. All right. Number 2 is the number 2 myth, the biggest myth that people believe about starting a side hustle or an online business is that there's a perfect time to start, or that there was a perfect time to start and you're too late. This is actually one I still grapple with, and I have to sort of give myself my own pep talk around like, it might be too late. So here's an example. Here's a little story for you around this idea of that there is no perfect time, and that there won't be a perfect time. You can't wait for a perfect time to present itself, that you just got to go now with the resources, the information, the time that you have right now, and just, again, take action. But here's a little story from my world and my life. This is playing out in real time in a lot of ways. So way back in 2015, I had just moved to Kansas City the first time because, I've traveled, come back. And I wanted to start a podcast / YouTube channel, like a video podcast. And I wanted to do like a weekly show and just like share my ideas and all these things. And I did about 7, maybe 8 episodes. I can't remember exactly. It's called The New Dorothy Show. And I was just ranting on like random topics. There was no real strategy. Like everything I know now, I didn't know yet about when it came to like content strategy on YouTube. And I did it for a little while and then I stopped because I was like, you know what? I think maybe I'm too late. I'm too late for that YouTube game. I'm too old. Gosh. I'm too old for YouTube. And so I cannot do this anymore. And I just stopped. I just gave up and I stopped doing it. I think I've unlisted those videos, but they might be in the archives on YouTube if you want to go check them out. And they're not great. It's not my best work and not that everything always is, but it's out there and I tried and I did it. And now it's, 6 years later, and here I am on YouTube again, on the podcast again, doing a video podcast. And this time, I definitely could be saying, it's too late, I'm too late, this is not the right time, I should have done it last year, I should have done the year before, I should have done it the year before, I should have done it in 2010, should have done it in 2004 when YouTube first came out. I could say all those things, and conceivably all of those things might be true. All those statements could be true, that yeah, if I had the idea, maybe I should have taken action. But here's the thing when it comes to ideas. There are millions of ideas. I have 7,000 ideas a day. But you know what are the best ideas? The ones that I actually do something about. The ones I actually make moves on and take action on. And so the ones that I sit there and hem and haw and decide like, is it the perfect idea? Back to myth number 1. Or is it the perfect time? Is it the right time? Is it right time of year? Or if I launch something in summer, will people pay attention? If I launch something in December, are people too distracted by the holidays? I mean, there's all these decisions that we could just say that like, this is not the right time. That there is a perfect time to start. And this kind of layers on this idea of like, well, I'm going to wait until I have a better camera to start a YouTube channel, or I don't have the fancy mic, so I can't start my podcast, or I definitely want to make sure that I have an editor on board, so I want to make sure before I do that, I want to raise enough money so I can pay somebody to edit everything and make it perfect. Friends, that is only stopping you. It's only making you later and later and later to this game. And I want you to show up early. I want you to be out there. I want you to be making moves so that in a year from now, you're like, wow, I just published 52 podcast episodes. Like, think about it. This time next year, 2022, August 2022, you could be the host of a podcast that has 52 episodes out in the world. I want to meet that person. I want to be that person, frankly. So you can't think about what time has passed behind you and like, are you too late? And you also can't think like, I need all the situations to be perfect. Everything's got to be lined up in order for me to make moves. I got to be in a different job. I need a better title. I mean, I was talking to a friend the other day and they want to start doing some consulting in their industry, but they feel like they haven't had that director level title as a job role in order to justify them going out and becoming a consultant. And I told them, I said, no. You can't think about the job titles you've had are not the things that are going to get you a consulting gig. You being able to help deliver and get results and help someone solve a problem that they have, that ability and your ability to communicate that value that you can bring to them, that is what's going to get you a consulting gig. They're not going to look at your resume or LinkedIn and go, oh, I loved what she had to say. I love that she could offer me something, but she hasn't been a director before, so never mind. I cannot hire her. That is not how people's brains work. People want to know that you're going to make their life easier, better, faster, stronger, like all the improvements that they want to make in their business or their lives. They want you to show them that you can help them achieve that in a meaningful, realistic, maybe faster way or more efficient way. And you holding yourself back because you feel like you haven't met and ticked off the boxes, That's just a limiting belief, my friend. That's just you making an excuse because you're scared. You're scared that people will say no, that they're not ready, and you're going to get some rejections. Well, that's going to happen no matter what. And so using this idea of like, well, I got to get all the situations right. I got to get the perfect setup to start my YouTube channel, or, I need to have this perfect website before I actually start writing any content on a blog. All of those things are simply excuses. There is no right time. You do not need to wait for any sort of mythical permission from the mythical gods that exist in your industry to tell you that you have the right to start producing and creating and putting your idea and your thing out into the world. There is no perfect time, and you are not too late. I feel like I was listening to a webinar or a video or a podcast. I can't remember, but like 5 years ago, I remember watching this guy who does like YouTube teaching and educating. And he was like, it was like 2016. I remember because I've wanted to do YouTube a long time, y'all. I've wanted to do this for a long time. So I'm here, I'm showing up, and I'm going to do it messy. But I've wanted to do this so long. So I've been consuming all this content around diving into YouTube. And I listened to another podcast that he was on just this last week, and he was saying the same stuff. And he was just like, in 2015 or 2016, I was telling people it's not too late. In 2021, I'm telling people it's not too late. In 2031, I'm going to be telling people it's not too late, because the world is big, the world is large, and not everybody's going to take action. But if you do, you will be still part of a small group of people who do the work, take action, and start putting their stuff out into the world. All right, that was myth number 2, is that there is no perfect time, and no, you are not too late. So the third myth that people believe when they're thinking about starting their side hustle that stops them from taking action and putting that goodness out into the world is that they say that they don't have enough time. Now, this can be a dicey one to hear from me, because you could say, well, Brooke, like, you're not a mom, you're not married, you don't have a quote unquote, real 9-to-5 job. And so you don't understand what my life is like. And you're right. I don't understand what your life is like. And I will never be able to relate to all of those variables at this stage in my life. But here's the thing, is that we all are grappling with something that's taken up our time, our mental, our emotional energy, that grates on us, and that allows us to say to ourselves, there's just not enough hours in the day. Now, I get it. I'm woke enough to know that there are lots of people in the world who literally do not have the time. They're working 4 jobs, they are trying to raise their kids and do the best they can, and they're just trying to make ends meet. Frankly, those people are not likely listening to this podcast. I would love it if they were, but they probably aren't. They got other things to do. They don't have time for my podcast. But if you are listening to my podcast, that means that you likely have some time that you can etch out into your calendar to make time for your side hustle. And here's the thing about side hustles. There's no like minimum requirement of time and execution to get something off the ground. A lot of people think like, well, it's kind of comes back to number 2, where the perfect time to start. Well, I'm only going to start when I have, 2 months ahead of me and no obligations and no commitments. Yeah, I mean, conceivably that is a real thing you could think about, but at the end of the day, we all know that shit comes up. Even if you see down the pike 2 months of just like, oh, I don't have any travel, I don't have any plans, nothing's going on, no visitors from out of town, no big tournaments for my kids' soccer, whatever's going on, and you can look at your calendar and you say, oh, this is the perfect time, but you know something's going to come up. You know that something is going to come up, because it always does. And so you need to reverse engineer your thinking and start thinking of your side hustle, or thinking of this project that you want to get off the ground as a non-negotiable. Just like if you decided, I'm going to get healthy and I'm going to start, going to the gym and eating right and cleaning up my diet, all those things. Well, then you have to start making the time you put into your side hustle, whatever that time is, or whatever amount of time that can be, and you have to make that non-negotiable time. When I started Inside Study Abroad, it was just a blog. I had no idea what it was going to be. Again, coming back to there's no perfect idea. I had no idea what that was going to turn into, but I just knew I wanted to write about study abroad. And so I spent Saturday mornings, every Saturday morning for a solid 3 years, working on the blog. I wrote blog posts. I worked on the design a little bit. I answered emails. I didn't really know what I was doing, so I didn't know the right things to really work on. But dang it, I woke up at 8 a.m. I made myself a coffee. I sat myself on the couch with my laptop, and I worked on it for about 2 hours every single Saturday, 2 hours a week. That's all I ever worked on Inside Study Abroad for the first 2, maybe 3 years. That was it. And could it have grown faster? Absolutely. Could I have done more? Maybe. I probably could have found more time. Yeah, I was working full time, whatever. I could have maybe spent more time, but that became my non-negotiable. And I'm not telling you, in order to get your side hustle off the ground, you've got to work 20 hours a week on it, or 50 hours a week, or 90 hours a week. Oh my gosh, no hustle around here. Right? It is a side hustle, but we're not killing ourselves over this, okay? There's no minimum amount of time. If you've got 30 minutes a week to devote to your side hustle at first, then that's what you got. And that's what you etch out. And that becomes your non-negotiable. If you've got 2 hours, you've got 3 hours a week, whatever that number is for you. But you need to do an audit of your time and really be real with yourself, like for real with yourself about where you're spending your time. And if this is important to you, if this is something you truly do want to pursue, can you etch away some time that takes away from your Netflix watching, for instance? I know that I could probably watch a little less Netflix in my life, if I'm being honest. If I really wanted to get healthy, for instance, if I really wanted 6-pack abs, I have the time to make that happen. I just don't prioritize it. And so you have to decide what is going to be your non-negotiable and around your side hustle, and put that into your calendar. And I don't want to be vague. I don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to work on it a couple hours a week. No, I want to know the day you're going to work on it, how long you're going to work on it, and I want you to put it in your calendar as an appointment with yourself every single week, and you're going to show up for yourself to deliver on this idea that you want to have. Because you know what? Nobody's going to show up for you. Nobody's going to make this idea happen for you. You have to be the one who advocates and shows up for yourself if you want to get this idea off the ground. I told you guys, I'm feisty today. I'm like, let's get this party started. So if you want more of this kind of like in your face pep talks, just stay tuned, hit subscribe. I'll be here for it. All right. So that's the third myth, is that you don't have enough time. And I'm sensitive to the fact that people are busy. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of stressors and things. What I'm saying is you need to look at your full life and your full lifestyle, and also put that in conjunction with the life you want to have. If you're trying to leave a 9-to-5, if you want to make a side income that helps pay your student loans off faster, if you want to be able to take a big trip every year with your family and you need the funds to do that, well, that's great. Now you have to align that with the life you're living right now and figure out how you're going to rework your schedule and prioritize the things you want to achieve in your life. Because I'm all about that YOLO. I'm all about that FOMO, where you're just like, you know what? I want to go out with my friends tonight because FOMO, right? Or YOLO, and I want to go have, cocktails with friends at the end of the day as a happy hour. Those are all lovely and wonderful things, but you have to put that into the larger context of your life as it exists right now and the life you want to be living. And you need to make sure that your actions right now, your actions today, are serving future you. I always talk about if you've watched How I Met Your Mother, if you're young and you don't know what I'm talking about, well, hello, welcome. But it's a sitcom. If you haven't seen it, it's hilarious. But they talk about this idea of like, oh, we'll let future so-and-so, future Barney think about it, or future whatever, think about it. And sometimes I do that. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to let future Brooke, she's going to deal with that. Sometimes future Brooke or present Brooke goes, past Brooke totally took care of that. She made things happen, and current Brooke is totally happy. I know, talking about myself in the third person. All right, moving on. All right. The fourth myth that people believe around starting a side hustle and an online business is that it has to replace their full-time income right away. Wow, I'm just going to tell you right now, that is a hard place to be. And I have done that. I have lived that in a different kind of way. So my first company, I haven't talked about this a lot on the podcast, but I will in future. We'll talk about it more. But my first company, Yoga Travel Tree, it wasn't, Inside Study Abroad was my first project, or my first side hustle, if you will. It wasn't really a business yet until 2015. But in 2013, I launched a company called Yoga Travel Tree, and I got outside investors for that business. It wasn't a ton of money. I mean, it was a lot of money, but it wasn't like millions of dollars. It's a good chunk of money. Angel investors. And I quit my job, and I had to take on consulting clients to pay my bills. And I used most of that money to pay developers and a tech team to sort of build out this tech product we were trying to create. And I felt so much pressure at the beginning because I had to not just pay a staff and a team, but I also had to pay my mortgage. I owned a home in Colorado at the time. I had a car payment. Student loans. I had to feed myself. Barnaby needs food. Barnaby's my dog, by the way, if you're not familiar. But I felt a lot of pressure for that business to produce right away. And what happens when you put so much pressure on your business and on your side hustle to sort of be the breadwinner, to make sure that you are putting food on the table, that you have a roof over your head, that you're paying the minimum viable bills that you need to pay, that forces your hand in a lot of different ways in your business. And frankly, because you're acting from and operating from a place of fear and a place of pressure, it's more likely that you're going to make bad decisions, that you're going to make decisions that you wouldn't make if all the financial stuff was taken care of, if all other things were equal and money was good and secure, that you might say yes to things that you shouldn't be saying yes to, that you might say no to things that you should be able to say yes to. So when you do that with your side hustle, when you say, okay, well, I'm going to do this tomorrow, Brooke, and I got to start making $4,000 a month because that's going to pay all my bills and that's my bare minimum. That is a recipe for burnout and failure. Because what that does to you is it puts you in the mindset of work, hustle, and I got to perform and get stuff out into the world right now, every single day. I've got 10 ideas and I got to execute on all of them by 10 o'clock tonight. Oh, honey, that is a hard place to exist. And believe me, I existed in that place for the first 3 years of Inside Study Abroad. The first 3 years of Yoga Travel Tree, rather. I lived in that zone of fear and overwhelm and hustle and burnout. I mean, it was a really, really hard time in my life. And I don't want that for you. And so if you have a job right now, if you have a full-time job and a career path you've pursued for a long time, or if you're waiting tables somewhere, whatever you're doing, receptionist at a dental office, I don't care what you're doing right now, do not quit your day job. Do not put yourself in a position where you are forcing your hand and forcing yourself into a mindset of lacking, of not feeling like you have enough, of feeling that pressure of I got to make $1,000 this week in order to pay the rent tomorrow. Those types of decisions are typically not the best for your business. And I have lived in it. And I know this is, Auntie Brooke telling you that do not live in that place because it can be very stressful. And I promise you, you're not going to see the kind of success and organic growth and comfortable growth that I think is what most of us should be shooting for if you live in that place of lacking, okay? So instead of putting all this pressure on your side hustle to replace your full-time income, you need to establish goals. You need to establish income goals that and other types of goals like audience growth goals that ladder up over time, that step up gradually. So if you're just getting started and you're just like, I just have this idea for a podcast, for instance, around talking about, I don't know, cycling, and you're a big road cycler and you love that world and you want to start a podcast talking to cyclists and cycle mechanics, and I don't know, I shouldn't have used this example.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Siri, she thinks that I said her name. Anyway, so I don't know enough about cycling. I shouldn't have used this example. But if you did want to start a podcast around that subject matter, deciding tomorrow, okay, I'm going to have a podcast, and then in a month, it better be paying the bills. That is a recipe for failure. And that is a recipe for a podcast going out to the podcast cemetery and just dying. Because I think the stat is there's like majority of podcasts that are actually out there in existence, like that have published episodes, have not published more than 10. I heard that stat somewhere. I'll have to try to pull it up. But yeah, so most people who get started with a podcast, for instance, they never get past 10 episodes because they probably likely put too much pressure on it. So you need to ratchet back your expectations on, one, what it can produce income-wise, and two, what you can do based on your lifestyle right now, the time you have, the industry that you're going into, and the viability of the idea. All these things will play a role in how soon you find success. And so you need to be willing to give this idea some breathing room. And so that means not making it make all the money in the world within a month or 3 months or even 6 months of you getting started. So it does not need to replace your full-time income. But what you can start to say is like, okay, maybe you pay, $300 a month in student loans every month. And so that's your first goal. You're like, I want my side hustle to pay my student loan debt for me. Like that's what it's doing. That's its role in my world. And then starting to brainstorm, okay, what are ways I can earn $300 a month from the side hustle in some way, right? So you can start by stepping up those income goals or audience goals. You can make it based on downloads, for instance, in the podcast episode. So don't put so much pressure on this idea, on this side hustle to replace your income right away, because you're just going to set yourself up for failure and burnout. Probably in 3 months. Call me in 3 months. You'll be like, oh, honey, you were right. And I'll be like, I know. So let's not do that. All right. So the last myth that people often believe when it comes to building a viable side hustle or pursuing a side project, an idea, a business of some kind, is that it has to be your one true life's purpose. And it's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. This is a good one. Now, this kind of ties back to the first myth of this idea that you need to pursue the perfect idea. And often that myth comes from people thinking like, well, the perfect idea is not only one that's going to make money and all the things, but also that is going to feed my soul until I die. Now, I'm not saying you should start a side hustle that, just totally does not jive with your ethics or morals or values or anything like that. I'm saying you probably are going to start a side hustle around something you already know a little bit about, you have some skill sets in, some knowledge, some experience with, or maybe you truly do have a big passion for that. But it's likely not going to be your life's purpose because, again, your idea, that initial idea, whatever you think of, it's likely not going to be the thing that it morphs into over time. I can tell you from experience that when I started Inside Study Abroad, I didn't know what it was going to be. I just liked the name because I basically stole Inside Higher Ed, became Inside Study Abroad because I'm not that creative. So I was like, they talk about higher ed. Generally, I'm going to talk about study abroad specifically. So InsideStudyAbroad.com. There we go. Got a name. But then I just started writing these random blog posts about like where the Harry Potter characters would study abroad if they studied abroad. I can't remember. I talked about financial aid and funding. I talked about marketing strategies for universities and utilizing study abroad as a value proposition when they're talking about like recruiting students to their institution. I don't know. I was talking about all sorts of stuff. I wasn't talking about careers yet. That came later. That came from people asking me lots of questions about launching and growing a career in international education. That was not my big perfect idea out of the box and like, kids, I'm going to start at the Global Pro Institute. I'm going to help hundreds of people build and launch, grow their brand and their career in international ed. That came literally years later. And so, and that's fine. I was doing other things. I had advertisers on the blog for a little while. I did some like one-on-one coaching. I did a little bit of consulting at one point. I still do that, but like it was very smattering back then. And I was just sort of throwing darts at the wall, just seeing like maybe I'll hit a bullseye. And eventually it came because I just listened to my audience. I listened to the quote unquote marketplace about what they wanted, what they needed, what was their problem, and how could I be a solution, be an answer to their question. And so is helping people grow their career in international ed my life's purpose? I don't know. Am I going to be doing that when I'm 50, when I'm 60, when I'm 70? I probably not. Am I going to be helping people start an online business, live a location independent lifestyle, become a digital nomad, travel the world, work less, earn more, live brazen, all that stuff till the day I die? Maybe, but maybe not. Like maybe I'll have a new idea. Maybe I'll start another tech company. Maybe I will, I don't know, win the lottery and retire to Italy. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm not going to put the pressure on my work and on all my businesses to be also my identity and the thing that I get the most purpose from in my life. Do I love what I do? Do I believe in what I do in my businesses? Absolutely. I almost said effing-alutely, but trying to keep it somewhat clean. But absolutely, I love what I do. And absolutely do I think I add value. And absolutely do I love the students and the people that I get to work with inside the Build Your Online Business Incubator, inside the Global Pro Institute, inside the Global Pro Labs, in the Brazen Society that's launching later this year. I mean, I love showing up and helping and coaching people to achieve the thing that they want most. In these two instances, it's starting a side hustle, building an online business, and in the other instance, it's launching a career in international education. And I don't know if I'll do it forever, but I know that I love doing it now. And the thing is that I'm never going to put the pressure on it to be a forever solution for me. And you shouldn't either. You shouldn't look at your side hustle, this idea that you have right now, and think, well, 95-year-old me better love it too. And unless I'm going to love it at 95, then that's the only way I can do it. And your thing is just going to morph over time. It's just going to change over time. I was talking to somebody the other day, they started a podcast around travel. But initially it just started because they loved travel. And so they started a podcast, and on this travel podcast, they happen to talk a lot about travel hacking and using miles and points to travel for free or for cheap, all the things. And so the people started asking like, hey, can you help me? And so they do like travel planning for people and helping them use their points in smart ways to travel for free and cheap. And it wasn't ideal. It wasn't his like ultimate goal and dream of the thing he wanted to do, but he was helping people travel. It kind of got to that greater mission. And later on, like he helps people start a side hustle, kind of like what I do. He didn't know that eventually would become his thing, because frankly, he didn't know that was a thing. He didn't know he was starting a side hustle. He was just doing something. He was following the idea and then following the next idea and taking in all that data and making the new choices every single month and year in his business and in his journey, until he's gotten to the point where he is today, where he coaches people in online business and all the things just like I do. But it started because he was like, I really like travel, and I really love talking about travel, and I want to help more people travel. Great. The other thing is that there are so many different approaches to an idea that you don't know how it's going to shift and change. That's something we're working on at Inside Study Abroad right now, is that this fall, we're actually going to be shifting gears a little bit. Not shifting. We're still going to talk about careers in international ed, but we're going to basically add on to that portfolio, if you will. And we're going to be talking about some other subjects too that I'm really excited to bring into the Inside Study Abroad ecosystem. And so the idea here is that you might love it right now, and you might think it will be your life's purpose for the rest of your life. But I promise you that if you're listening to this podcast or watching this episode, you probably have a lot of ideas, and you probably have a lot of passions, and you probably have a lot of wonderful things that you could contribute to the world. And you're not only going to contribute one thing, you're going to contribute 50 things maybe over the course of your life. And that's okay. Embrace it, love it, own it. And just realize that like there's no perfect idea. There is no idea that's going to stand the test of time. That's the one thing you do for the rest of your life. There's no perfect time to start. You're never going to have, quote unquote, your ducks in a row. So stop trying to get them there. Just get started. It's not too late. And you do have enough time. You may not have hours a week to do it, but you might have 30 minutes on a Saturday morning. You might have 30 minutes on a Friday evening instead of going getting drunk with your friends. You might have some time somewhere in your schedule to make this happen. It doesn't have to be all the time. And it doesn't have to replace your full-time income right away, okay? Don't put that pressure on your side hustle to be the breadwinner out of the gate, because it's going to cause you a lot of stress and overwhelm and burnout, frankly. All right, so those are the 5 big myths that I see people believing again and again about what it takes to start a side hustle and online business. If you have been struggling with any of these, let me know down in the comments. Leave me a review on the podcast. Send me an email, hello@brazenness.com, and let me know. What are you facing with? What are some limiting beliefs or myths that you're believing around starting your pet project or your next big idea, your side hustle? I'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you are interested in joining the Build Your Online Business Incubator and you want more fire content like this, join me inside. Just go to brazenness.com/incubator. You can join there, and I'd love to see you on the inside of that. Until next time, remember that every day you postpone a dream, you weaken it a little. So get out there and make some magic happen.